Solicitation. Let me start by introducing myself. I am a temporary worker in my early 30s who is desperate for a future. I have lived in Tokyo all my life. I am single and my parents have been dead for a long time. I have a younger sister and a younger brother, but they already live apart. I don't know if this is odd, but I know someone who works as an exorcist. Not just an acquaintance, but a lady I met at a standing bar near the nearest train station. I think that was about 7 years ago, counting now. I had just moved to a new place and didn't have any friends to drink with after work, so I started drinking at a standing bar that I could casually go into. And when the lady saw me, she started yelling, "Gah!" To tell the truth, I am quite used to it, and for some reason I often get shouted at by people I don't know. If you want to scream, that's fine, but that man scares me. I once had a caller say, "Catch him." Why, I ignored it, feeling like, not again. But this lady talked to me unlike anyone I had ever met before. "Where are you from? What do you do for a living? What do your parents do?" She asked me questions one after another as if she were interrogating me. Well, I thought it would be nice to be friends with such an old lady, so I answered her questions. A short time later, the lady said, "Come to my store next time," and handed me a store card. Well, I wasn't interested in it. And I was annoyed that she spoke so superiorly to me, so I immediately threw the card away. However, later that day, I met her again at the bar, and she took me to the bar by force. I couldn't escape because there was a skinny old man and a young woman in addition to the old woman. By the way, the old woman was called Tokiko, the young woman was called Kei-chan, and the old man was called Yasuo. I was sure they were trying to recruit me for a religion, I thought as I followed behind the three. No one talked until we got to the restaurant, so I tried talking to Kei-chan. She said, "Hey," and I couldn't talk to her. Then Yasuo said to me, "I'm sorry, I'm afraid of you," which made me very sad. So I arrived at the store, which turned out to be just another fortune teller's house. I thought that it did not look like a religious institution, and I was hoping that they were going to tell fortunes for me. As soon as we arrived at the store, Tokiko suddenly started to say something strange. She said, "Would you like to work with us?" I was listening to the story without knowing why. It seemed that the three men were in the business of exorcisms, and they asked me to follow them. At the time, I was an employee of a company, so I refused, saying, "I have work to do." I refused. But the lady didn't back down. She asked me enthusiastically, "Would you consider it as a part-time job on weekends?" I don't believe in ghosts or gods, so I just said okay. Immediately, I was called the next weekend and taken to a house in 20 Ward. It was not far from my house, so I rode my bicycle to the meeting place. He was furious with me, saying, "Come on foot, you idiot." Reluctantly, I parked my bicycle nearby and entered the house. As soon as I entered, Tokiko and Kei-chan started saying, "Oh, there they are, aren't they?" and frowning. But I didn't even know what I was looking for. I thought it was just an ordinary house. There was a middle-aged couple in the living room, serving us tea and snacks. They were smiling, but I remember they were pretty twitchy. After a while, Tokiko said, "Let's get started right away." "Please show me the room," she said, standing up. Without really knowing what was going to happen, I was led upstairs. When I went up the stairs, there were 2 rooms on either side, and I stopped in front of the door of the room on the right. On the door was written Takao in alphabetical characters. "Here you are." The middle-aged couple said to me. Tokiko and Kei took out salt from the backpack they were carrying, sprinkled it with bottled water, and sprinkled it on their hands. I wondered what was going to happen. I asked them if I should sprinkle salt on my hands too. She said, "You don't need it. Just do as you are told." After warning the middle-aged couple not to get upset no matter what, Tokiko opened the door and went inside. As I was about to follow behind, a black shadow covered Tokiko from inside. It was a boy of about junior high school age named Takao. He had a strange glazed look in his eyes, bared his teeth, and shouted something like, "Gaja gaja, gaja. Gaja gaja, gaja." He was about to bite Tokiko's neck, and I thought that was a bad idea, so I approached him to pull the boy off. When Takao saw my face, he started shaking and ran to the corner of the bed and curled himself up. "Anywhere on your body, just slap him," Tokiko yelled at me. So I felt bad and slapped him on his curled up back. I didn't remember hitting him that hard, but he said, "Yugia." And Takao fell down bubbling. The parents approached to take care of Takao, who has collapsed. I looked at Tokiko with a sideways glance, thinking, I didn't hit him that hard, did I? Now the exorcism is over, and he will be fine. That's what she said. I think that is what she said. After that, I put Takao on the bed and left, being thanked by the middle-aged couple. It was the first time in half a year that Takao had slept soundly. By the way, Takao's room was in a terrible state. I think he had put his things away because they were probably dangerous, but there were cuts and holes in the walls. On the way home, I was too confused about what it meant. I told Tokiko honestly, I don't know what it means, and asked her a lot of questions. Poor Kay, who had come with me, puked on the way home. "You've got quite a thing." That's what Tokiko told me. At first, I thought she was referring to my penis, but it turns out she was not. Apparently, the term guardian spirit or chi is used in different religions and schools of exorcism. I asked her, "Is it really that good?" She replied, "No, it's the opposite. What you have is the worst." That's what she said. I thought, "Worse is not good enough." I said, "Worst, that's not good enough." She said, "Normally, yes. But you are not normal. It's strange how you can live with that." According to Ms. Tokiko, the thing I have is quite terrible. In fact, I heard that Kei-chan puked and was possessed when I hit Takao. I wanted to ask her many questions, but she was feeling so bad that Tokiko and Kei went home by cab. I rode home on my bicycle, which I had parked. I got 100,000 yen from Tokiko's store. I wondered how much they really paid me. I thought so. I was happy to get 100,000 yen for patting a junior high school student on the back. To tell the truth, I studied abroad a short time later. The reason was that I wanted to do something more than the job I had at the time. Well, I came back 3 years ago, but I had no job and no career, so I am still living as a temporary worker. After I returned to Japan 3 years ago, I met Tokiko and she said to me, "You're getting pretty tough, aren't you?" She grinned at me. It seems that my thing has been nourished with Siryoku in a foreign country, and has become more powerful than before. I was just studying seriously, you know. Since then, I have been working part-time as an exorcist for 3 years. However, Tokiko, Kei, and Yasuo seem to be psychic and can see many things. I, on the other hand, really can't see anything. So, even now, I just tap on them or talk to them. Unfortunately, Kei-chan still throws up after work. It's my fault, and I always feel sorry for her. And I actually have one more job tomorrow. This concludes this story. Thank you for listening to the end. Inheritance. In a certain region of Shinane Prefecture. I am now 20 years old and live mostly in the mountains. Usually, people live at the foot of a mountain, or at worst, in the middle of a mountain where there is a road. For some reason, my family has a house in the mountains near the top of the mountain, even though we are not engaged in temple or forestry work. It was not strange to me since I had been living there since I was a child, and on the contrary, I was happy to be in a place with a good view. I often played in the mountains when I was a child. I was happy because I felt as if the whole mountain belonged to me. No one came, and even though it was in the middle of nowhere, I had a secret base. There was no need for such a place, but that is how it is with children. It's fun to have your own place named secret just because it exists. The place is a shrine. And it is perfectly square and symmetrical. Even the position of the trees and the number of things like garden stones. What's even more amazing is that the front and back are also symmetrical, like mirrors. The torii gates are located on the east, west, north, south, and south sides, and the shrine is on all 4 sides. Of course, there are 8 guardian dogs. It was such a strange shrine that people didn't come here, so I often came here alone. It wasn't that I was alone, I had a childhood friend a kilometer down the road who I could have gone to, but I couldn't take him to this shrine. My grandfather had told me very strictly that I could not take strangers to the shrine. He made me promise even harder, you must enter this shrine from the west and exit from the south, and only in October you must enter from the north and exit from the east, and you must not go there at night. If you go there, you must exit at a place other than the torii gate. This was a promise. It was like a secret base, and I was so happy that it was like a code for me, and it was a promise that my grandfather loved and kept. And the other day I was going to college and hadn't been back in a long time. And this summer on Bon Festival, my grandfather and I talked about the shrine for the first time in a long time. My grandfather was happy to hear that I had started drinking alcohol again, and he kept on offering it to me, so we both drank a lot. The next day, my grandfather woke me up early in the morning with a hangover. It was not only early morning, but it was only 3 o'clock in the morning. My grandfather was dressed in pure white and holding a white sake bottle with a white sake bottle. He also had a vermilion rope on his shoulder. I had a good time last night. I'm sorry it's so early in the morning. I have an important matter to attend to. Please come to the shrine we talked about last night. I was too sleepy to refuse him, thinking it was no joke, but my grandfather had a serious look on his face. My grandfather has a Buddha-like face, always smiling with a gentle smile. His face has turned austere and rugged like Eastwood's. I decided to arrive to see what was going on. It is night, but close to morning. Where would we enter in this case, given the promise of a secret base? I was pondering. Enter from the north, follow the wind from the western sky. It comes in from the north, follows the wind from the western sky, hangs rain on the light in the east, and comes out from the north again. To the south is the land of death. It is the land of roots. I want to be in the enclosure of the world. I want to enter the garden of the descended God. The great deity Susa, the sacred stone. Cleanse me, cleanse me. Have I come to seal the 4 gods? The 4 deities are the earth serpent, the grass serpent, the black serpent, the 8-necked serpent, the 8-headed serpent, and the 8-headed serpent. The earth serpent, the grass serpent, the black serpent, and the 8-necked serpent. Wrapped around Zeus's great divine sword. He started chanting some kind of unintelligible incantation like this. Later I was made to memorize it myself. Actually, there's more to it, and in fact I've altered it a bit. I'm told it's a rule not to say the complete words. After those long words of congratulatory incantation, I finally entered the shrine in a rather unusual way. And I was made to wait at the southern torii gate, while my grandfather was alone in the shrine, closing only the south side and leaving the rest of the shrine open. I could not see what he was doing from here. After a while, a pure white person came out from the sacred trees on both sides of the shrine, fluttering many fluttering flaps that the priest was holding on his back. He had 3 eyes. And his back is glowing. I was shaking, of course. I was incontinent for the first time in my life. I realized that it is true that people leak urine when they are frightened. It was the moment when I thought I had lost my sense of time, or rather stopped. The southern company door opened wide and strong. Naturally, I thought it was my grandfather. He was my grandfather, but it didn't feel right. Get away from them. But I knew that the 2 white figures on either side of me were God, so I felt doubt and discomfort when my grandfather, a deeply religious man, referred to them as God. My sense was right. The head of my grandfather, or something like him, suddenly rolled off and some black snakes came out from where the head had been. I am not supposed to be very psychic, but these black snakes were not good. I intuitively realized that it was not a ghost or an evil spirit. And then, gods on either side were holding swords. I hoped that I would be saved. Then they moved away toward the east and west torii gates on the left and right, respectively. I was scared of the gods because I had never seen them before, but I was much more scared of the evil black snake. I could clearly feel the harm and killing intent. The black-headed snake, which looked like a fake of my grandfather, took 1 or 2 steps toward us. Oh, my God, he's dead. I wondered if God would save me and my grandfather. My everyman self seemed to have passed out from the standard of these talks. When I came to, I was in a shrine that was open on all sides. In the middle of the shrine was a bare sacred object. It was a sword, but a very rusty one. The usual Buddha-like smile of my kind grandfather. Good. I'll try to keep this short, so please listen. My family has been guarding that shrine for who knows how many generations. As you know, it is no ordinary shrine. It's not that there are no worshippers, no priests, no money boxes, or anything like that. And those gods and snakes you saw earlier were not dreams. They are the memories of a higher god. And it is a ceremony to pass on the role to you. I inherited it from my grandfather a long time ago. But your parents don't know. It's a rule to pass it on to the grandchildren from generation to generation. It must have been scary for you, I'm sorry. But it's fate. I don't have to do anything or become a Shinto priest. At any rate, I will take care of it and clean it until I die. But when I die, you will do it. And you will do to your grandchildren what I did to mine. You will learn the rituals and the words, and then you will clean up and take care of the rest. Keep that promise. My grandfather said this with tears in his eyes. He said, when you get out of college, go live here. I know you're scared of living here, but you really don't have to do anything out of the ordinary, and rest assured nothing will happen to you if you go back to the shrine. I am now 20 years old. In 2 years I will graduate from a university in Kyoto, and I am certain that I will be living here. As a modern person, I don't want to be involved in this occult thing, but I don't deny that it has happened. However, I am not sure whether or not I will get married and have offspring. However, I am amazed that such an eerie and frightening ritual or practice has continued to this day, without any family breakup. And I recently found out why. The other day, I went to a shrine to buy a fortune with my girlfriend. She loves fortune telling. I hit my hand and closed my eyes and the wind blew in a bois. She is still praying with her hands together. I turned around and saw the 2 white fluttering gods in the place of the guardian dogs. I thought that this god would probably be with me until I die. I'm not happy to think that they are there when I'm doing this. This concludes this story. Thank you for listening to the end. Rejection. This was my actual experience this summer. It was one of the most incomprehensible experiences I've had in my 24 years of life, and it scares me when I remember it, but nothing special is happening to me right now, so I'm writing about it. Sorry for the long story. I'm a freelancer in Kanto area. This August, I went to a pension in the Chubu region for a 3-day, 2-night trip by myself. I used to travel a lot when I was a student, and recently I was looking forward to taking pictures of the idyllic countryside with the digital camera I just bought. During the day, I would take the train or bus, but there were not many buses in the countryside, so I had to wait for a while for the bus. That's all there was to it, but I was having fun. The pension was run by a family and among them was Mr. Yamada, who was the same age as me. Yamada asked me, "Where are you from? And do you often travel alone?" After dinner, we had drinks together, which was a lot of fun. On the second night, Yamada said, "Come again. I was very happy. I paid the bill early in the morning of the third day, left my luggage at the pension, and went out to explore the vicinity a little again. I took the train from the nearest station to the pension and got off about 15 minutes away. I thought I might be a little bit wary as an outsider, but I figured that if I had my camera with me, it wouldn't look suspicious, so I took a quick shot here and a quick shot there. When I passed by a house on the street, a kid was looking at me and I said, "Hello." And he ran behind the house. I thought to myself, I can do this. I could do it. I continued my search. Then, when I got a little closer to the mountain, I came to a field with thick reeds. I looked across the field and saw a torii gate through the reeds. On the other side of the torii gate, I could also see a stairway that seemed to lead up to the mountain. Really? I thought. This is the point I had been hoping for. I was overjoyed and headed for the shrine. As I climbed the stairs, I noticed that the shrine building looked quite old, and although it seemed to be well maintained, the grounds were covered in moss and the environment was completely in line with my tastes. So, through trial and error, I took a lot of pictures of the shrine from various angles. I was satisfied because I was able to take a lot of pictures of the stones. I was so happy that I was able to take so many pictures. I went down the stairs and sat down in the field and took pictures of the torii gate that I could see through the reeds. Then, through the lens, I saw a child in red running down the stairs of the torii gate in the distance. What was that? A child? There are no houses around the shrine. I was wondering why she was running, but I was afraid that she might get angry with me, so I just stood there waiting for her to come closer. I felt like I couldn't run away. The girl came up to me. I can't quite recall her face. I don't know why, but the outline of the girl was blurred and out of focus. But for some reason I didn't feel uncomfortable at the time. She said, "Tell me a story," and showed me a picture book she was holding in her hand. I looked at the picture book and saw that it was a picture book I used to have and read a lot when I was in the early elementary school years. For some reason, I could see every detail about the picture book clearly. For some reason, I could clearly see the details about the picture book. I thought, wow, I used to read this a lot, too. I looked at the back of the book, and to my surprise, the name I wrote in my childhood is on it. Why? I thought I had already thrown it away, so I looked at the girl's face and said, "What?" I looked at the girl's face. Then she grabbed my clothes around my waist and looked up at me. Her face had no eyes or mouth, just a big black hole. Then she looked me in the eye and said, "Hey." I think he looked me in the eye and said hey in a sweet voice. I was like, whoa. I was so shocked. I dropped my picture book and the camera I had just bought, but I didn't have time to worry about that. I ran as fast as I could down the street I had just come from and tried to get to the station as fast as I could. I regret why I left the camera at that time and ran away. I regret why I left the camera at that time and ran away, but at that time all I could think of was that I was really scared and I had to run away. When I arrived at the station, a train bound for the pension was waiting to depart, so I bought a ticket and boarded the train. Now that I think about it, it must have been creepy to see a guy shivering on the bar without even sitting down, even though there was an empty seat. But I saw something weird at the time, and I panicked. I can see people walking on the platform through the train window, and the contours of some of their faces bend into all sorts of shapes. They look at me. Then they turn their faces back around and go away. The clothes were like kimonos, and not a single person in the squishy group was wearing any clothes. I was already holding on with my eyes closed, hoping to get to the pension as soon as possible. I was sweating so much that I was getting chills all the time, just like when I had the flu. When I finally arrived at the pension, I found Mr. Yamada in the lobby. I said, "I'm going back. Come and get my stuff. Right away." I don't know why he ordered me to do that. I think Yamada's parents came over and were very worried about him, asking what was wrong. "Get off at 20 station. If you take a picture, you'll get the girl's picture. I was in a panic with my head in my hands. Yamada's parents told her to get her luggage and take him to 20 station right away. They said, "Oh, he's going to give me a ride to the station," I thought as I stood up unsteadily and followed Mr. Yamada through the entrance of the pension. Yamada let out a loud yell and took a step back. A gray-skinned, naked, shaved head about 1 meter in height was standing with his face down. Then he blinked and disappeared. A few seconds after I saw it, I exclaimed, "Whoa!" I exclaimed, somehow in time. I fell on my butt. I was like, "No, no, no, no. Just go. Let's go." And Mr. Yamada got me up, pushed me into the passenger seat of his van-type car, and started to drive off. I was in the passenger seat, clenching my teeth and meditating the whole time. I was still in a lot of pain, as if I had a fever. But Yamada-san seemed to be breathing hard, too. I could tell that he must have been very nervous as he drove. Maybe Mr. Yamada could see the squishiness I saw in my eyes. We arrived at a rather large station, far from the nearest one to the pension, and Mr. Yamada bought a ticket for me, who was still in a daze. He bought a ticket for me and said, "Take the train right away and change to the Shinkansen on the way home, okay? Are you okay?" He handed me the ticket and my luggage. I wanted to run away right now, so I said, "Oh, no problem. Good night." I replied like a drunken person. I went through the ticket gate. Looking back on it now, I'm really sorry, Mr. Yamada. As the train gradually traveled farther and farther away, I could tell I was feeling a little better. But the feeling of fear I had felt earlier was still burned into my memory, and my body was very worn out. Around the time we entered Kanto, I felt someone angry at me, like "Don't ever come back here again, or I won't forgive you if you come here again." It wasn't like I heard a voice in my head or anything. It felt like that. And then, all at once, the feverish temper disappeared. This was strange. Anyway, I went home that day. Later that day, I sent a message to Mr. Yamada online as a way of apologizing. "I'm glad you got home safely. But maybe you shouldn't come here so often anymore," he said. So I told her that we should meet somewhere and talk again sometime. I don't want to go there anymore either. Just remembering that feeling of dread makes me shiver. I don't know if it's haunted or what, but it's starting to get on my nerves now. But I'm scared. I don't know if I want to go that far. I feel like, why would I go that far? But I'm scared. It's so strange, and I wonder if it's possible for something like that to happen, or if I'm just going crazy. This concludes this story. Thank you for listening to the end.